The voices won. Like, literally, they won the set. So I know that when I made my analysis of these cards that I said I would not be getting physical versions. I almost did. Things have changed. The brain worms have been eating away so much that it just kind of escalated to this. And now I've just been actually going to local tournaments with this. Well, a local tournament at a specific card shop. I've been doing pretty decently, all things considered. I was not expecting to get any wins off this deck at all, but I've been able to at least go 2-2, getting 4th place more than once. I want to make it very clear, this deck is not at all optimal. This is very much a deck that I am making for personal reasons with a specific goal in mind. If all you care about is just what the cards are, I'll leave just the deck list in like the pinned comment or something like that. But otherwise, here is my deck profile for my pure Shining Sarcophagus deck. Now let it be known, like I said, this deck is not optimal. There are a few things that I have kept in mind when making it. One, I have to use at least one of every single card in this series. God damn it, I can't wait for that Dark Magician to come out. 2, make it as good as I can, I guess. No, yeah, that's really the only stipulation. Just like use everything that I have access to. So, without further ado, let us begin. So, first of all, you're going to need 3 of the following: Shining Sarc, Gadget Trio, and Future Silence. This will ensure you have maximum consistency, at least in engine. I'll get into generic consistency boosters in a bit, but for the most part, that is basically 9 copies. You, if you don't have the Sarc, you can use Gadget Trio to get it, and if you don't have them, you can use Future Silence to get them, then you can get the box. I know in my original video, I kind of ended up glazing this entire deck, being like, oh my god, there's so much consistency. Having played with this deck enough now, I've begun to see its flaws more than I had before. This consistency is nice. Unfortunately, while it does technically constitute as 1 card combos, it is essentially registering a 4th of the entire deck just to have access to this 1 card. Now, the Sarc is powerful. Being able to search for like any card that you need for whatever the situation calls for, depending on what your hand is nice. I think the biggest weakness is that there's so many options that you could go into that it's kind of hard to always have access to literally everything, but, you know, you do with what you got, I suppose. So yeah, it's not the greatest thing ever, but like, you know, at least you're gonna have like an active hand outside of negates. After that, I'm using 2 Ties That Bind, 2 Silent Magicians, and 2 Silent Swordsmans. Now, the reason that I'm running 2 of each of those cards is mostly for the grind game. This is my first time like playing Paper since I was a child, so I was constructing this under the like guise of my experience, which has been Master Duel. Now that I've been playing Paper, I've come to realize the importance of the side deck way more than I had before. And having 2 copies of these cards is merely just like, if I'm going first, like I can like search more of this shit, get more of this shit off, like in case I need it. It's probably not necessary half the time, but it's for insurance purposes. Also, it means that if I draw into one of the silent zeros, then it's not dead on arrival. If I also need to normal summon the gadgets, which like I guess it technically wouldn't be, because I could always go into more Marshmallow. I'll get to him in a second. But yeah, just yeah. I'm running 2 turn silence. You could make an argument that you might want to run 3. I think 2 is fine. It's one of those things where it's like, if you draw into it, good, but if you have like an established hand, you'd rather just search for it if you can. It's definitely the best negation tool the deck has access to, because it just negates like any monster effect at all regardless of where they are. That combined with targeting protection and spell negation from the silence does mean that there are some limits that your opponent has in terms of like actually interacting. Again, if you're able to actually get all these pieces together. Next, if you're going to be running at least one of everything, you're gonna need at least like 2 copies of more Marshmallow. I would love to run 1 copy, but if you want this deck to function at max capacity, then like if you're running 1, you might as well just run a second one, just so that off destruction it could just pop another on field and burn. It's also nice for chain blocking, I suppose, which I'll get into in a sec as to like why that could be useful, but yeah, it's just kind of like it's there if you need it. Otherwise, I am also running 2 copies of Black Magician. So for the most part in this deck, he just kind of acts as a free body, which is fine. You know, 2500 attack is respectable enough to just shit onto the field for free, but really his main purpose is to blow the fuck up, come the fuck back, and then search a spell for or trap for himself. And like, that's fine. It's really mostly used for like 1 combo unless I draw into, like, my opening draw has like a hard combo piece specifically. Again, I'll get into that later, but for what it's worth, like, he's a free body on field. Like, yeah, like, it's fine. I only run 2 because, like, you're not gonna need to, like, his summon is hard once per turn, so it's like, yeah. Speaking of hard once per turn special summons for free, Gandora G. Again, I run 2 copies for the grind game, but it's not necessary if, like, you know, going second. I feel like I should mention, like I kind of alluded to it, but like, yeah, so swapping out like the second copies for some cards in the case of going second is actually imperative if you want to run some like specific disruption tools or generic non-engine stuff. 1 copy of Archfiend's Advent for the funny. There is a non-0% chance that taking control of an opponent's monster might be valuable, so he's there. Speaking of 1 copy, just because he's there, Stronghold the Hidden Fortress. You wouldn't think running this guy is good, and he technically isn't. However, the use cases for this Garnet, well, okay, he's not really a Garnet, I can still set him when I draw into him, but like, the use cases for this guy is that when I blow up Gadget, it can chain block Dark Magician searching for a particular spell that I'll get into in a second. So it's nice just to secure that in case they got like Ash in hand or whatever. Which I would be surprised if they had Ash at that point, if they didn't already grab the box, but whatever. Maybe they're just patient with it. But yeah, also 1 copy of Dark Magic Mirror Force. I was talking in the original video like, oh, you're gonna grab this more than any other Dark Magician card, but it's like, I guess if you're not running like other Dark Magician stuff, but like at that point, like, why even like run half this like run this deck half the time in the first place? But like, this is still a really good protection tool if you're able to grab it. Like, running the 1 copy is fine. Search it if you really can afford it, but it's like not necessary like at all to prioritize with all the protection going on. But it's nice to have. Now for that spell you're going to grab most of the time. Seekers of Dark Magic. It's just the quick play fusion. If you get Dark Magician on field, bring out Gandora, destroy DM with Gandora. You summon him back with this, and then you can use this to summon a fusion that using Gandora and DM as material. There are 2 major targets, but I have a few miscellaneous things just in case, I guess. Also, again, if I like end up hard drawing into that shit, then I have other targets, such as Eternal Soul. So running this card is a tech option that I'm choosing to do for a specific thing in which the combo relies in me either drawing this or the fusion. If I draw one or the other, then I can just go into my alternative combo, which I feel like would be theoretically stronger than my plan A, I guess. It really depends on the situation. I will get into that when I go over the extra deck. But because I'm running that, I can search for a free Feather Duster, so that's why I'm running Dark Magic Attack. It is very unnecessary. Please don't do that. Kind of for memes, and kind of for... because I can. It would be funny. Anyway, that is it for the engine and Dark Magician support. Do you see the problem yet? These are all the Shining Sark cards that I'm running. This is 26 cards. This is more than half the deck. These three are Dark Magician support, and together that makes 29 cards. This leaves me with 11 cards of non-engine to work with, and that probably doesn't sound too bad until you realize some of the non-engine I want to run is like not all hand traps. Again, in the main deck. I'll get to the side deck soon, just bear with me for a second. So for those consistency boosters, 2 copies of Pie of Extravagance and a single copy of Prosperity. The reason I'm not running 3 Extravagance is because Prosperity is just a better card, and running 4 of these things is a little overkill because, while I don't care for the extra deck, I don't want to get rid of fucking everything. That, and if I draw into 2 Extravagances, then that's just a fucking brick, but whatever. So yeah, that's my consistency booster. I don't really care for extra draws. I'm not really drawing the turn I activate that. So that's nice. Another interesting small 2-card engine that I'm running is Bestials, Magnamut, and Druisworm. This is a $15 card. This shit is like outside of like the Shining Sark itself, this is probably like the most expensive card in the deck. But they work really well. Because again, Graveyard Disruption is always nice. You're running like light and dark monsters yourself, so you always have access to it if they don't like get shifted or something. Again, I'll get to that in a moment. But if they don't like get banished by Gandora or something. But yeah, the Bestials are pretty synergetic because Druisworm is just a really good card in general. You know, being able to out anything on the field, but also Magnamut specifically, like, can search for him during the end phase, but because his search effect is as generic as saying one dragon monster, he can also search for Gandora. So there you go, another example of like the effect is always live even if you drew into the other one. If you drew into the swarm. So with all that being said, that leaves me with 6 cards left. Because if you are running even a 41 card deck in Shining Sark, you are doing it wrong. The consistency matters so much that you cannot afford it. So I just end up putting like the 2 best hand traps in the game, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, and 3 copies of Ash. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, so that is the main deck. Now on to the extra. So for the fusion spell, I have two primary options. If you're any bit familiar with Dark Magician, you probably understand that, like, yes, you're gonna want to run Dragoon. Technically, you should be able to run like 3 copies if you're really concerned about like the pot cards or unicorn, I guess. But really, 2 is fine. Like, I've not really had a problem with it so far, especially when I have, like, again, other options. But also 2 copies of Dragon Knight, which, by the way, check out this rarity I was able to get, like, for pretty cheap. Like, I feel dirty putting this in a deck. It looks too good. Trust me when I say it looks better in person. But yeah, the reason I'm running Dragon Knight is because if I happen to draw into either Secrets of Dark Magic or Eternal Soul, then I can just have Dark Magician search for the other. I have access to both of them, and with Eternal Soul on the field, Dragon Knight becomes Dark Magician and gets the Towers effect that Eternal Soul provides. Now, you could make the argument that, like, Dragoon just does that, but can also, like, discard to negate and pop and go to 4,000 attack. And while that is true, my reasoning as to using Dragon Knight specifically is because not only does he protect Eternal Soul, which is important, but he also protects the Sarcophagus, which, you know what? Some people do be running Feather Duster out there. So, yeah, it's kind of important to at least have, like, an option to go into it. There are 3, as I would like to call them, jank alternative options that I can theoretically also go into. We have Amulet Dragon if you really just need a big, fat, stupid fucking beater. I might not keep this guy. Like, legitimately, like, the Dark Magicians might be a better, like, fusion alternative, because at least I draw a card. But, he's there. And, you know, if he is destroyed, then, like, I can at least, like, bring Dark Magician back, who can recur himself if he's destroyed, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's, like, an option if, like, you made that shit, but can make it again. Which, I don't really have a way to recover the fusion spell, but, like, you know, if I did, oh yeah, I'm gonna be so real. Like, cutting the Dark Magician shit and, like, maybe going for a Super Poly variant would be more ideal. But, like, this is what I got so far. Maybe if I got a second copy of Secrets, that could justify it. I don't know. I might replace, like, Dark Magic Attack at that point. We'll see. This is the... I've been constantly, like, trying to, like, improve this deck, so this is the, like, the most recent version of it I have. But, yeah. Other options is Dark Cavalry. You do run a warrior, so it is not impossible. Since you're gonna have, like, spells or traps, like, on the field and in the grave, like, it does, like, get boosted that way. It does inflict piercing, and it has, like, another bit of targeting protection. So, you know, if for some reason this is the only thing you can go into and you already used up your protection on Soldier and need more targeting protection for some reason, then, like, there you go. Very niche cases, but as you're going to see, the extra deck doesn't matter that much, especially when one of the cards lock you out of it. And finally, for fusions, Dragon Crown. This thing is like... You can make him. It requires a spellcaster and a dragon. But yeah, Mysterion... Yeah, he's immune to Super Poly, so there's that. It loses 100 attack for each of your banished cards, which is like... Yeah, technically that doesn't synergize that well with Gandora's stuff and the other bullshit I got. If a monster uses its activated effect to special summon itself, or a monster with its same original type, except our damage step, You could target one of those special summoned monsters, banish that monster, and also banish all monsters from the field with its same original type. So, you know, there's a non-0% chance that this thing could be like, I'm so gonna be honest with you, I'm just using this to fill up the extra. I don't know if I'm ever gonna go into this, literally ever. I'll talk about it later, but like with the Dark Magician Girl coming out eventually, I'm probably just gonna want to like replace it with like the Dark Magician Girl Fusion, because that is also a non-0% chance for me to go into. But also running like, you know, 2 spellcasters is also kind of funny. As for non-fusion monsters, because there is a, again, non-0% chance that this can happen. For example, if like my field gets negated or something, Baguska. Yeah. And because of that, I'm also doing a Divine Arsenal, a Zeus Sky Thunder. I've yet to go into this thing. I've yet to go into Baguska, but again, it's there. Next up, there is Barricade Board Blocker. I'm running 2 copies. I had 3 before, but I've been, again, swapping shit out. This thing is pretty good because, like, it's like pretty much your best option to retrieve the Sarcophagus for the next turn because it adds it during the end phase. I don't know why it does that. I guess to balance it out, but like, man, they couldn't make like a 7-1 for continuous. Whatever. The link you're probably most often want to go into though is, yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, I am also running the Light and Dark Charmer links because I can make them, and again, non-0% chance that I could get some mileage out of it, depending on who the opponent is. And the final extra deck card, originally I was running Celine to, like, again, retrieve, like, either Dark Magician or one of its fusions, but, like, literally, I've never had the opportunity to go into it. So if I'm gonna go into a Link 3, it better be really fucking impactful. Anyway, BLS. Yeah, you're gonna be running a lot of high-level monsters, especially if you let the silent fellas go off. Especially if you negate a monster effect. So, yeah, it's pretty good. And now for the side deck. So, the utility of the side deck is that I have a bunch of different stuff depending on what the situation calls for. Because the deck benefits from as much stuff being banished as possible, it is, as you could probably imagine, running 3 copies of Dimension Shifter. Yeah, call me a degen all you want. It's probably the best card in the deck. You know, aside from Jewel Storm, of course. But also to add on to that, 2 copies of Dimensional Fissure. Now, the reason why I'm doing Fissure and not Macrocosmos is because, 1, being able to activate it immediately is nice, depending on, like, if they have a hand trap that requires to be sent to the graveyard. Like, I doubt I'm ever going to run into Max C, but, you know, never thought I'd say that. But, you know, in case they have, like, some other BS or whatever. But also because, like, because it only sends monsters and not spells and traps, I can get the graveyard benefit of turn silence. Fun fact, this Dimensional Shifter I actually had in my original collection when I was a kid. So that's cool that I'm able to just, like, put it in here. So that's if I want to do, like, some banish bullshit. But let's say I also want to increase the stun potential of the deck. You're gonna hate me for this one, because in that case, you run 2 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcaster. If you have a Spellcaster monster on the field, your opponent cannot activate spell cards. You run 2 of them, not including the ones in the extra deck. It's also another option to recover with barricade board if you really need it. But on top of that, there can only be one. Or Tikbu, as some call it. All of the monsters you run are of different types. So there should be no issue there. Just make sure that if you're using it, that Magician and... both Magicians are like, not on at the same time. Or you at least use the spell negate. Something I've come to realize is that this deck best functions when it is playing into its stun potential as much as possible. So while a pure variant isn't necessarily like the best way to play it, there are some ways of going about exemplifying its stun potential, which I will get to in a bit. As for generic good support, I'm running 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet. There's a chance that you'll be using like stuff in your hand or some such in order to get rid of effects. It combos well with like Turn Silence because you can just use Turn Silence and then pop that and then just like send Turn Silence to the grave, or just use up Silent Zero that used their effect already, or like an extra more Marshmallow in hand or something. Also 2 copies of Evenly Matched. You're gonna need as much board breaking as possible with this deck. And then finally, 3 copies of Silent Judgment. Because if you're having your life points with Gandor, then there's probably no problem with doing it again. Really bad card to go into time with, though, as I have learned the hard way. Another thing I had to learn about when going into paper. I actually have some notes as to how best use these cards in the side deck. So if the main deck is like what I start out with, right? But if I'm going second, I replace 1 each of a copy of Gandora, Ties That Bind, Silent Magician, and Silent Swordsman. So I replace 1 copy of each of them with the 2 Evenly Matches and Forbidden Droplets. So that just gives me more board breakers and interruption tools. And if I want to focus on banishment and stun, then I replace all of the Ash and Imperm and the Bestials with Shifter, Dimension Fissure, Secret Village, and Tikbu. Now, obviously, like in the cases where you want to focus on stun and not banish, or vice versa, then you like switch up the ratios as you see fit. I would recommend trying to focus on swapping out the Bestials for the banishment stuff. So like the Bestials for the Fissures, for example, and then maybe the Ashes for the Shifters. Yeah, like go about that as you see fit. If you're going first, though, then you want to replace all of your Ash with Solemn. So the reason Solemn is good is because it's just Spell Trap Negation, which if it's used to destroy, it's really just insurance purposes. You know, you already have like negation of that stuff, but like, let's say they summon a monster you don't want them to have on the field. Boom. But also, if you want to focus on the banishment stuff, replace Impermanence and Bestials with Shifter and Fissure. And for stun, replace Impermanence with Secret Village and Tikbu. Now, let's say you want both, then like, honestly, maybe do that instead of Solemn, or just like take out 3 other cards as you see fit. Like one, like maybe of the 4 that I mentioned, that would be like worth getting rid of. But like again, for the grind game, it's very much situation dependent. So that is the deck. I'm really happy with how I was able to construct this. There is room for improvement. I do feel like there are some small tweaks that I can make to like optimize it just a little bit more. But as it stands, I'm really proud of this. This is probably the most passion I've put into a deck that I've built ever. Probably because it is the first real deck I've built that wasn't just a bunch of random commons from 2008. If you want to use a real version of Shining Sark without my stupid stipulation, then I recommend the following variants. Kashtira, is pretty good to team up with it because, again, they synergize really well with being banished and, you know, locking the opponent out from doing much of anything. Also, Horus, if you want to run 2 Sarcophaguses in a single deck that act as continuous spells, then double Sarc it up, baby! Hell yeah! Just another really good stun option in general. But something that I've discovered is probably the best version of the deck possible, or at least the most synergistic. And I'm sorry... I'm sorry in advance for saying this, but, like... Runic. They have 2 quick play spells, which synergizes with their own continuous. They already have a built-in way to deck out the opponent with Future Silence to help out with that. Like, yes, the drawing can be annoying, but, like, you know, if you're running low on card advantage too, that also helps. Plus, them being banished boosts Gandora even more. Even if you blow up the field spell with Gandora, you could just go into the dog and just retrieve it that way, which also might reset, like, the recycling from grave stuff if you could get that off. Yeah, there's just surprisingly a lot of synergy with Runic. And those cards are really cheap too, so it might be the best variant of the deck, especially on a budget. I would still recommend some Bestials if you can. But yeah, that's my deck. That's what I think of the cards. As far as I'm concerned, this is how it's going to be until Dark Magician comes out, which, by the way, I need to talk about that. So, sometime in between this video and my previous analysis of the cards, they had announced that Dark Magician Girl would be getting a retrain, as I very much predicted, as anyone with half a brain would have predicted. It has the signature Dark Magician Girl effect, and by that I mean like the Magician's Apprentice thing. I forget what it's exactly called. Basically, Dark Magician before she became Dark Magician. It's a whole thing. I'm not gonna get into this, man. But like the thing is, she can like discard a card to summon herself, and then she becomes Dark Magician Girl on the field. On summon, just search the Sarcophagus. That is a 4th copy of the Sarc in the deck. A fucking 4th. So yeah, your mandatory cards just kind of went from 9 to 12. Again, I wish she was considered that in the grave, because that would mean the field spell would work really well with her, but whatever. She also gets like 100 attack for every Shining Sarc card, or I think it was every Shining Sarc monster in either graveyard, which, funny, reference to the original card, technically an upgraded form of it, but again, this deck has enough attack boosting. It has more of a focus on the banishment than the graveyard. I don't know why it's specifically the graveyard. Why can't it be graveyard and banishment? I don't know. Fuck me. But yeah, when they add that, I'm probably just going to replace, like, Ash Blossom with it or something. I don't fucking know. I have not been able to stop thinking about these cards since I first learned of their existence. This shit has taken over my brain to such a degree that it made me more obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! Than I already was. And it really sucks because there's one more deck that did a similar thing. So yeah, that's the deck. Thank you for watching. Big shout out to the guy on Etsy I got this from. I absolutely love this thing. It's like 3D printed. It's got like blue velvet. It's got like magnets in it. Like, it's really tight. I do not feel comfortable taking this out of the house though. But yeah, this is probably the coolest thing ever. I will leave a link to their Etsy if you're interested in this or anything else they make. But yeah, that's it for me. Let me know if you're interested in hearing about that other deck. I'm probably gonna talk about it regardless. But yeah, okay, thanks, bye.